Hey, welcome back. This is part 2 of my in-depth look at the Imperial Guard or Astra Militarum index cards. The first video goes over the rules for the army and the HQ type units. I am breaking this down by HQ, fast attack, troops, elites, heavy support, just to make it simpler for me to pick which ones to do in each video. This one's going to focus on the troops, elites, and probably fast attack, depending on how long this takes. And even though I know those aren't things anymore, anyone who's been playing for a while, they'll know kind of what I'm talking about. And I think really for the most part, troops, elites, and fast attack, they're pretty self-explanatory even for somebody who might be new to guard. So if you have any questions about that, you can leave that in the comments section. I'll get back to you and explain which section each would fall under, but again, it's pretty straightforward. So the first one is the Infantry Squad. This is our most basic unit. Every single guard squad has the option to do 10 men or 20 men. There's nothing in between, nothing less, and nothing above. That gets you 1 sergeant and 9 guardsmen, or 2 sergeants and 18 guardsmen. It is basically the old blob squads of 5th and 6th edition. I think even 7th had it, where you would just go at the start of the game, I want these guys together. So you're basically doing that. You can attach 2 characters, 2 leaders, and you can use basically, if one's a command squad. Or sorry, if no more than one is a command squad. You can't have 2 command squads, but that's okay. If you do give them a command squad, they get a 6+ feel no pain. That happens to all infantry. And I think it's really worth doing besides getting the orders nearby. That 6+ feel no pain is quite powerful. Now, carrying on, the way you break this down is every 10 guys come with basically 9 las guns and the sergeant gear. The sergeant can have either a chainsword, las pistol, bolt pistol, plasma pistol, power sword, I think a regular close combat weapon, and the infantry, one of them can take a flamer, grenade launcher, melta, plasma, or sniper rifle. I will probably refer to those as special weapons because that's what they've always been up until basically recently. Maybe in 9th, I can't remember in 9th if they call them special or not, but I've been playing for almost 25 years. They're special weapons. That's what they've been since 3rd, at least, and I'll probably just call them that, slipping up. And then you get 2 guys that can form a heavy weapons team, and you get a heavy bolter, or you get an autocannon, las cannon, missile launcher, or mortar. I think a really good way to use these guys is with a plasma and a las cannon if you have those available to you for each squad, because that's very heavy firepower in terms of doing damage to tougher stuff at range. And the reason you're going to be wanting to do damage at range is because of the ability these guys have, which is Defenders of Humanity. If they get attacked with a ranged weapon and they're within range of an objective marker, they get cover even if they're in the open. So they don't have to go hide. You don't have to worry about where they're situated on the board. And because cover is literally always just a +1 to your save now, it's a really simple unit to use. I think it's a really good starting point for most players because you don't have to worry about moving forward, you don't have to worry about positioning, and you can just focus on using some big guns. If you have a platoon command squad, that can add a 3rd heavy weapon, plus a special weapon and the metapack. If you want to do that, or metapack and maybe a Voxcaster, just so that the Master Vox, just so you can send that order further if you need to, but I don't think you're going to need to. Ordering these guys to get +1 to hit on 2 or 3 las cannons is going to be really nice, and it's going to let you really help the rest of the army by doing damage to those big monsters and tanks that they're running up towards that maybe they otherwise aren't going to hurt very easily. Yeah, these are all the weapons. I'm not going to go through all the weapons just because these are standard Imperial Guard weapons. The index versions now have changed slightly here and there, but if you're used to guard weapons, and even if you're not, they're just here to look at, and these are all free, of course. You can find them at the Warhammer community site. So yeah, good options, solid use as a backfield holder, and with 25 guys, they're not just going to get shifted immediately. You can put the +1 armor save order on them if you think they're going to get charged, and I think they would hold an objective longer than some people might think. Moving on to Cadian shock troops. In 9th edition, these were like the new, really good choice we had. There were other good choices, but for the price, these guys were the cheapest we had compared to Krieg and Katachan. They did compare equally to infantry. These guys are the exact same as infantry. All infantry for for guard are the same. So they're 6 movement, 3 toughness, 5 5+ save, 1 wound, 7 leadership, which is terrible, and 2 OC. But these guys are supposed to be terrible just because, we're guardsmen. We can have lots of units, so it's okay if 1 or 2 go battle shocked, and we have ways out of that anyways. And these guys here are your move forward and take objective guys. Their special ability shock troops lets you take an objective marker, and at the end of your command phase, they basically plant a flag so that they can leave and continue to hold it. You keep that objective until the enemy takes it away from you. So that's a really nice ability. As you're moving up, you don't have squads that are getting left behind to babysit a flag. You just plop your own flag and move on. I think that's a really good unit to keep your army moving. Movement's very important in 40k at this point because everything is objective based, every mission. And while there's other ways to get points, your main way to get points, your primaries, will be objective holding. So getting as many objectives as possible and keeping the enemy from having them is, just really great, especially if you're facing a slower enemy and you can leave empty objectives that will take them time to get to, and in that time you can go contest or take more objectives with these guys. So what makes them special is that unlike the other guys where they get a heavy weapon, these ones can have 2 of the special weapons, and the sergeant can swap its close combat equipment for essentially a Tommy gun, a drum-fed auto gun. It's a nice weapon. It's 2 shots. Otherwise, it's a las gun. And yeah, these guys are just really, really useful. Actually, I forgot to mention Voxcaster on the infantry unit list. Every infantry group has the option to take a Voxcaster, and other than the Krieg, there's no reason not to. So basically, every time you put a stratagem on one of your infantry with a Voxcaster, you roll a die 6, and on a 5+, you get 1 CP. So if it costs 1, you get your CP back. If it costs 2, you get 1 CP back. And if there's an officer nearby, like say an attached command squad, or even I think a tank just driving by, a tank commander, that's going to give you +1, meaning 50% of the time you're getting your point back. So that's super powerful if you're using stratagems, which you will be. Whether or not you'll be using them on infantry, every turn or even most turns, that's really dependent on your play style, but I can see using it. The only question I would have about this is whether or not, if you use the reinforcement stratagem to get a dead unit back, if that would count. Because the Voxcaster would be dead, but you are using it on a unit that's supposed to have a Voxcaster as they go into strategic reserve. I don't think it would work, but I would like to see an FAQ just to confirm that. Otherwise, there's really nothing too much else to say here. That 2 special weapons, drum-fed autogun, move forward, put lots of shots out. Don't forget this is not 9th edition, so they don't get an extra shot when you roll a 6 to hit. They do not have sustained hits anymore. Moving on to Krieg, these guys are tough. So like all the rest, you can have up to 20. Like all the rest, you can have a command squad with a meta pack for a 6+ feel no pain. But unlike the others, every command phase, you're going to get die 3 dead Krieg models back. the FAQ might allow us to get 2d3 back. Currently we have 1 meta pack, but it seems like it could be 1 meta pack per 10, or it might simply be, it doesn't matter if it's 10 or 20, it's 1 meta pack. I could see both being valid because 2d3 is quite strong, but also 2d3 is quite nice, so we'll have to wait on the official ruling on how that works. Their ability is that every time they make an attack with their ranged weapons, with all their weapons, including close combat, if one of them is dead, you get +1 to hit. And if half of them, or more than half of them, are dead, then you would get +1 to wound as well. Now, that sounds really good. The second part, you are basically down to 9 guys at that point. That's not terrible because they're allowed 3 special weapons per 10. So in theory, you could have a plasma gun, a Melta gun, and like a grenade launcher. And you could have that twice. So you could be up close, giving them +1 to hit with an order. So they'd be hitting on 2s with all those weapons. And yes, there's only a few las guns left, but your main damage would come from the special weapons, and they would all still be alive if you pulled them off the right way. So it's quite strong. It's just, don't forget that +1, or sorry, the +1 to wound only procs once you're under half. Also keep note that if you do heal above half or back to full strength, you would lose these, but it does give you the option to return up to D3 destroyed deathcore models. So in theory, I read that as you could take all 3 back if you roll a 6, or you could take 2 and leave 1 on the ground, because going back to 19 means +1 to hit, or going back to 9 means +1 to hit, +1 to wound. Going any higher would lose those for you, so I could see not wanting to bring them back if you're playing a more competitive game, although I think I'd always bring my guys back. I just feel like it would be in a fun game that feels, not fun to do. It's a little too gamey for me, but again, in a competitive setting, I think that's a very important distinction to make. Catachan Jungle Fighters, these guys were terrible in 9th edition because all they got were some flamers. Flamers were not going to do much, and otherwise they didn't get any real bonus to speak of, because all they have are las guns, flamers, and close combat weapons. They don't have extra attacks, they don't have extra toughness, they don't have extra strength, but that's all in their profile and their weapons. When you get to their abilities, these guys are quite good. So scout 6 inches, and then that means they're going to move at the start of the game 6 inches. You can get them up into position to take a objective, or you can get them into position for even a turn 1 charge, depending on what you're facing. I don't know if that's possible on any of the deployment cards, but I imagine it must be in some cases. It also just would get you up 6 inches and force them to deal with those guys, which could be good because you're threatening their lines 1 turn earlier than they might expect, and depending on the army, that could be really devastating. 20 guardsmen running into 10 Tau would be probably pretty bad, so it would force them to shoot those guys instead of something else. Then they have Jungle Fighter. Basically, whenever they charge or they get charged, you get +1 to your strength and -1 to your AP on your melee attacks. So suddenly, these 3 strength infantry now are 4 strength, and they have an AP. Again, if you are able to threaten something that is weak, something that these guys can bully, I think that is a really solid way to play them. Besides the fact that they're getting up and taking objectives early, a scout 6-inch move, depending on the deployment, might get you within range to pick up an objective before the first command phase. I don't know. I haven't seen enough of the deployments yet in person to really get used to that, but it's just, a variety of ways you can benefit from these guys. So they're going to have 4 flamers, and the rest is las guns. It's really just a fun unit, I think. They're still not as good as other infantry units, I don't think, but it's nice to see them with rules that justify taking them. Now, obviously, certain characters like Strachan and like Sly Marbo, maybe not Sly Marbo, but Harker as we go down, they do buff these guys more specifically, so it might be worth even more once you have the right officers leading them. So Sly Marbo, another Catachan. This guy, he's into your elites. This is basically Rambo. He goes out and he wipes out whole armies on his own in the lore and gets a medal, throws it in a box, and then goes back to his PTSD dreams and waits for the next mission. He's got a lot of rules. He's quite good. He's very interesting too. Basic guardsman, except he has 4 wounds. He only has 1 OC, but I don't think he plans to stick around anyways. I don't think that's really his thing, which we'll see in a moment. So, he's an infiltrator. He's a lone operative. Lone operative is good because it makes it very difficult to target him for an attack. And he has stealth, making him harder to hit when they do. He also has a anti-infantry 2+ pistol with precision. That means he can snipe out leaders if you get him in the right position and you get lucky with your shots. 12 inches, 3 attacks at ballistic skill 2+. Again, anti-infantry 2+ as well. Strength is 5, -1 AP and 2 damage. And then he has an Envenom Blade, so basically he's also got anti-infantry 2+. And precision again, so he can sneak in. And first he can shoot the enemy officer, and then he can get in and stab them and try to get out after. Probably won't if you get into that situation, but it is an option. Unless you charge something with fight first, between shooting and charging, he might be able to get rid of a leader that's not super tough. And again, 5 attacks, 2 weapons skill, 5 strength with the anti-infantry 2+, negative 1 AP and 2 damage for each attack. So again, if you get lucky, this guy can do some hurt. So 1-man army. Each time an enemy unit targets a friendly Astra Militarum within 3 inches of this guy with ranged attacks, and after that enemy unit has finished making its attacks, he can shoot as if it's his shooting phase. So if the enemy gets close to you, they can't shoot him. They can shoot the units around him, and as long as they're within 12 inches, he can shoot back. So it's more ways for him to go after characters. It's going to basically, in some armies, not really scare them at all, but in a lot of armies, that could be something to make them hesitate taking shots in his area. And then he's like fighting a shadow. Each time this model has used his weapon to shoot, if he's not in engagement range, he can make a normal move as if it was your movement phase. And even though we can't charge afterwards, this can get him out of danger, very possibly. Force the enemy to chase him around. So that's pretty cool. Oh, and he cannot be a warlord. I don't know why you would pick him as a warlord. I guess because he's hard to, shoot at. But he is literally like, I don't know, like a corporal or something. He is a sergeant. He's not an officer. He doesn't have some high rank. He's just a very good soldier. Now, Kasserkin, these are your elite special forces of the Cadians, and as such, they have a better armor save of 4+, and they tend to hit on 3s in range shooting, so they have better shooting attacks. These guys also have Scout 6 inches. They have Warrior Elite. So basically, you can give these guys an order, but then you're allowed to give them another order from themselves. It's really, really cool to have that option. It's very similar to Ursula Creed, where she can double up orders on her own unit. I doubt that stacks, so I don't think you'd be able to get 3. But again, that's another one for the FAQ. I'm going to assume no, but it would be fun to have a unit with 3 orders on them. They have the Voxcaster, and they have a Melta Mine. So once per battle at the start of any phase, you can basically pick an enemy unit within 3 inches of the bearer, and that unit takes die 3 mortal wounds. and it's 2d3 if it's a vehicle. So basically, um, it's that scene near the end of Saving Private Ryan where the guys just run out and throw sticky bombs on the tanks, trying to blow the tracks off. Um, one of the models you take can have that weapon. He just loses his las carbine or a hotshot las gun, sorry, and he trades it for a pistol and a mine. It's really kind of a fun um, option, I think. And, you know, because you can use it at the start of any phase, if they charge you or, a tank charges you, you get that option, especially if it's a tank. They might be willing to, throw a tank into a combat to swing it, but with these guys there, it would be a really, really bad choice because it's just 2d3 mortal wounds getting thrown at it. And while that's not going to kill most vehicles, it could seriously damage some of them and make it so that the next turn they lose that vehicle or finishes it off. So it's definitely a piece of war gear that I like. Otherwise, these guys can have up to 4 of the special weapons listed over here. Um, then one further guy can have a hotshot sniper rifle, and one guy can be the Vox guy. And then the sergeant, get his sergeant equipment over here. So you wind up with a sniper rifle and 4. And unlike the others, actually, that's the thing I forgot to mention. Other than the catechins who can have all the flamers because that's all they get, guard units tend to be only allowed to have 1 per special weapon. These guys can have up to 2 each. That means you could have 2 plasma, 2 hotshot volley guns, 2 plasma, 2 melta, and you can really tailor them to be very good at removing certain things, whether it's infantry or vehicles, monsters. It really depends what you need them for. At 120 points, it's a pretty solid investment with all those special weapons, and they again are the better unit in terms of saves and shooting. Then we get into these guys. The Regimental Preacher, he was a joke in 9th edition. He's often not that good. He's still not great here, but he's much more usable, I think, than he's been in a while. Basic human, a little bit worse save because he's just wearing robes. Probably has maybe like a lucky book to take a bullet, and that's about it. He does have 3 wounds because he's a character. And then he comes with a holy pistol and a power weapon. So a holy pistol is 3 shots at 4 strength and 1 damage. It's fine. I wouldn't get excited about it. You can also swap him over to have an auto gun and a chainsword, or a shotgun and a chainsword. I think the shotgun might be the best one just because it's assault. But the auto gun's probably okay too if you just want to have him sitting with a unit that's staying back. I just don't think you will. If he was going to go with anybody, I think he would go with catechins, and that's because he has war hymns. Melee weapons in his unit get sustained hits 1. I think that if you went with Strachan, who gives I believe lethal hits to his unit, and then this guy for sustained hits, I think that's a pretty powerful catechin close combat unit, and that's one worth considering. He has a 4+ invul himself, and he also can reroll to hit unless he's battle shocked in close combat. So he's good. I think I'd probably maybe consider swapping him over to the. I was gonna say I'd consider going to the chainsword, but you start with the power weapon. Yeah, I don't even know if you'd swap him. I think you'd just stay with the power weapon, just because it is AP -2. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Sergeant Harker. This is the last of the catechins. This guy here, he's a little bit tougher. That's nice to see because he's a big, muscly guy. And he's got 3 wounds as well. Again, just piss poor guard leadership. It's a real shame we don't have much more than a couple of units that buff our leadership, but it is what it is. He has a big heavy bolter that he walks around with, and it is not heavy. He just is so big he can carry a heavy bolter, and it's called Payback with sustained hits 1. Um, it's a heavy bolter. It's got heavy bolter stats, except it hits on a 3+. Because again, he's big and he's tough. Now, his actual model rules are Feel No Pain 6+, Leader, because he is an officer, he can give out an order, and Scout 6 inches. Again, he's great to embed with a unit of catechins. I think him and a command squad in one unit and Strachan and a preacher in another might be worth doing. And then he's got Harker's Hellraisers while he's leading a unit. Each time they get targeted, and by ranged weapons. The attacking model is more than 12 inches away. Subtract 1 from the hit roll. That's pretty sweet. I mean, these guys move up. Like I said, catechins can scout up. It might put you in a threatening position. Now they not only need to consider removing those catechins, they have to go within 12 inches to get rid of them more effectively, because after 12 inches, they are -1 to hit. So, things hitting on 4s or hitting on 5s, that's pretty sweet too. Keeps them around longer. And once per battle, he can use payback time. Basically, his heavy bolter gets sustained hits 3 instead of sustained hits 1. Now, remember, you're only sustained hits proccing on a 6. So with 3 attacks, it's not likely to come up. But if you did use it and you get lucky and you roll 3 6s, you're going to get 3 extra shots per. So you wind up with 12 heavy bolter shots. It's one of those bonuses that's not that great, but if it works, it's pretty awesome, I think. Very thematic. This edition, we've lost a lot of the stuff that makes armies and units feel special and unique. So it's nice having stuff like this in the army to see that there are still some units that are really telling a story, and that's important to me as a player. Now, the Regimental Engine Seer. This guy has been in my collection for years. I only recently painted him, and it was just to say I painted him, because I don't think they're that good. It's hard to justify. They give little bonuses, and maybe can heal some wounds on Lehman Russ. But now suddenly, they're not only healing wounds. These guys here can every turn pick a vehicle that's within 3 inches. That vehicle is going to get D3 wounds back and gain a 4+ invul till the next command phase. These guys for 45 points. If you're running tanks, if you're running a Rogel Dorn, you want one of these guys, I think. I think it's a good 45-point investment. Also, while they're within 3 inches of a tank, they become lone operative, so he doesn't have to be attached. He doesn't have to, worry about getting shot up, because something else will get shot before him. So, super neat ability right there. And also, if a vehicle is destroyed within 12, a friendly Astra Militarum vehicle, until the end of the battle, the model's axe has 6 attacks. So basically, he swings more often. And as you can see, he's got an Archaeotech pistol that's devastating wounds. It's only 1 shot, though. So that's nothing to get excited about, even though it's 6 strength and it has no AP. So you basically need to roll a 6 to wound. So that's pretty terrible. I think that should be AP -1. But he does have an engineering axe, 3 attacks. Like I said, 6 if a vehicle dies, 4+ to hit, 6 strength, -2 AP and 2 damage. And then he gets an extra attack off his servo arm, which is essentially the same. So you get 5 attacks like that, and 7 if a vehicle dies. He's got a 5+ invul. He can join all these, but unless they're going to stay with vehicles, there's no point. Just have him run behind a tank and let the tank worry about being shot while he buffs it. I'm I'll talk about the servitors, but I'm gonna go fast. Basically, they come with a heavy weapon. You can have you get 4 of them. You can have up to 2 of these, and yeah, they're terrible. They hit on 6s, and they have really bad stats. And the only thing you get is that if they're close to this guy, they get +1 to hit. Or sorry, they get a +1 to their ballistic skill and their range and their melee weapons. I mean, they're not good. They hit on 6 in range at range. They hit on 5s in combat, and now it's going to go to 5s and 4s. Um, they're not cheap enough to buy as extra wounds for him. I mean, if these guys were like 4 points each or something, 5 points each, I think buying this guy 4 extra wounds for 20 points, that might be okay. But that's not what you're doing. You're spending too many points on that. Unless you really think this guy is going to get wiped out, I don't see a reason for that. And frankly, if you thought you were going to lose him, take 20 Cadians or something. Anything but these. These are terrible. These have always been bad. They've never been worth using, at least not for many years. There was a time long ago these were okay, and that time is long past. GW does not know what to do with them. They don't even seem to buff him in any way, so just skip him. Commissar. The Commissar is pretty much, at least I think you got to have one if you're taking infantry. The reason being, standard guard officer stats. He does have better leadership. That's important. I almost feel like maybe 2 of them might be worth having just for the leadership. You also can combine that with political overwatch. If he's in a unit with an officer, you get to reroll the battle shock. So 6+ rerollable is quite strong. And if a unit does break from a battle shock test within 12 inches, remove a model from that unit and they pass. So this guy's going to keep your army running. A 24-inch bubble. I think if you have 2 of these, you have 2 units with rerollable battle shock tests, and then everybody else is getting picked up on the summary execution. He can join anybody. I just think he's going to want to be wherever your the bulk of your infantry are. He's good. Again, standard weapons, standard stats for what he is. This is what's important. And and he can give out 1 order. That's actually also important. It can only be duty and honor or fixed bayonets, but giving out +1 to objective control or +1 to close combat, I think that's a pretty strong option, and I think that'd be worth considering. Ogryns and Bullgryns, they share stats other than Bullgryns having better save. There's nothing different. 6-inch move, toughness 6, 3 wounds, 7 leadership, and 1 objective control. The difference is what they're equipped with. These guys are Feel No Pain 6+ and have big automatic shotguns with rapid fire 3, 18 inches, 3 attacks, 4+ ballistic skill, 5 strength, -1 AP, and 2 damage. And then they use those same auto shotguns, the Ripper guns, in combat. 4 attacks, 3 weapon skill, 6 strength, -1 AP, and 1 damage. And each time a model in this unit makes a ranged attack that at the unit that's closest to them, they get an extra -1. So this becomes a -2. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I like it. You can have up to 6. You start with 3. You can take 3 more. And I like Ogryns. I have some metal ones. The not the really old ones with like a Viking hat, but some good, nice like early mid 2000s sculpts. They're super nice. As much as the plastics are decent, especially the guns, the pewters are better, and I like the option of using them and having nice rules like this makes it a lot easier to bring them out. Now the Bullgrins, same thing as before, like I said, except their Feel No Pain goes with a wall of muscle. They get -1 to damage that they take to a minimum of 1. That's pretty solid. And I think it makes them better than regular Ogrins. I hate to say it, but yeah, they have basically this big shield and this armor, so they're a little tougher to kill on top of their standard toughness and wounds. They have two options, a brute shield or a slab shield. I don't know why you would take a slab shield. Maybe somebody can enlighten me, because the brute shield just gives you a 4+ invul. I think you always take that, because a 4+ invul with toughness 6 and 3 wounds and damage resistance 1. These models I think are ugly. I don't like them, but I'm going to find some sort of alternative to run. Just even having 3 I think would be quite useful. They have a grenade gauntlet. It's blast, 18 inches, die 6 attacks, using the new blast rule. 4+ ballistic skill, 4 strength, and 1 damage. You know, it's fine. If you had 6 of them, that's pretty good. I just don't think I'd run 6. They also have a maul, which I'm pretty sure is just... actually, let me read this again. Yeah, sorry, they give up this to get the maul. The maul's good, because it's 7 strength and -1 AP with 2 damage. But then you don't have this, so it's kind of a toss-up. The option to shoot and be okay, or the option to not shoot but have a much better close combat attack, because otherwise it's 1 less strength, no AP, 1 less damage. This is just going to be down to preference and how you want to use them. I do think I'd go with the club, just because, again, these Mega Man arms they're just dumb. I don't like anything about these models, personally. Rattling snipers. Snipers are weird. Most editions, and this one here, they're quite good. Usually they're hard to find a place to fill, but now because they have AP -2 and 2 damage on all sniper rifles, I think a lot of people can justify them when you include heavy and precision. So hitting on 3s becomes hitting on 2s if you don't move, and you can pick out enemy officers. That's pretty strong. What's not strong are these guys' stats. They're 2 toughness and 1 wound with a 6+ save, and you just don't let them be in combat. To do that, you have infiltrators and stealth, making them harder to shoot. And when they shoot, as long as they're not engaged, they can then make a normal move. So basically, they can shoot and move somewhere that's a little safer for next turn. It's pretty neat. They're a little more expensive than they were, but I think if you had a unit of them somewhere with a good line of sight, they could pay for themselves after 2 or 3 turns pretty easily. So definitely a unit to consider. Attilan Rough Riders, these guys got beat down pretty hard, but they were also very good before, so it's hard to argue. It's a shame because these models are gorgeous, and I think we're going to see a lot less of them now as a result. They're still good, though. They're just not as good. Sorry. So yeah, they get a las gun, just like before, and they can shoot that when they move. They get a las pistol, and then they get a hunting lance. So just like before, there's 2 options for their hunting lance, and it's either with a grenade or a melta. They're both lances, meaning you get +1 to wound on the charge, which is pretty good. And they both have 3. They both have 3+ to hit, with the grenades being strength 4 and 1 damage, and the melta being strength 9, -4 AP, and die 6 damage. If these guys came out of reserves on the side, on a turn where you could get them into a charge that turn, on the tank, I think these guys, or a monster, these guys are going to just clean up. I think if you start them on the board, even with 2 wounds at toughness 4 and a 4+ save, I think they're going to get wiped out pretty fast. Because I don't think anybody wants these guys to charge them. They don't want you to charge either infantry or vehicles or monsters, so they just get rid of them. You can also have a 1 goad for every 5 models. That's 2 attacks, 3 plus to hit, 6 strength, minus 2 AP, and 2 damage. Um, it's pretty good, but it's also only really good at like killing infantry, so I'm not sure it's worth taking because you also lose this. I don't think you'll ever want the goad. I could be wrong, but I don't see a matchup where that's worth having. Same with the power saber that used to be basically extra attacks. It's not anymore. So this would only get used on the second round of combat if you're still in there and you don't get lance anymore. Then they also have extra attacks from the horses. It's just 2 strength 4 attacks. Um, Charging infantry, this might be useful. Get a few more wounds in. And charging tanks, maybe you get lucky, but probably not. Finally, their ability is Horsemaster. You can ignore any or all modifiers for their movement and advance and charge rolls. And if they fall back, they can still shoot and charge that turn. So, again, I think if you use them right, maybe get a little lucky that they don't die on the next player's turn, these guys can dish out some damage and then move on to dish out some more, and it's going to be quite threatening. Whether you're wiping out big mobs of infantry with like 10d6, okay attacks, or you're going after vehicles and monsters, and most monsters seem to be around 9 toughness. You're wounding them on 3s, and they're probably not getting much of a save, and then you're just deleting them. So I think these guys have uses, but you got to be careful with them. Um, I still think that these guys won't see a ton of play though, because they are very expensive at 16 points apiece. If you don't use them right, you're going to have wasted a lot of points, I think. We have 2 types of Sentinels. They're Scouts and Armored. They're almost the same stats, except the Scout Sentinel has 1 worse save, but 2 more inches of movement. And the Armored Sentinel has, 2 less inches of movement, 1 more toughness, and 1 better save. Otherwise, they are 7 wounds, 7 leadership, and 2 objective control. These guys both have Deadly Demise 1, except the Scouts also have a 9-inch scout move. And they can take any of the heavy weapons we're used to. And they can also take close combat weapons and saws, which are, they're nice little extras. I don't think I'd want to rely on them because even at toughness 7, you don't want them getting too close to the enemy because they will get removed pretty quick, I think. Because their ability is quite good if you're looking at the scouts. Basically, they pick an enemy unit within 18 inches of themselves that they can see, and when friendly Astra Militarum units are targeting them, they get to reroll hits of 1, and they can ignore the indirect fire penalty. So all of our nice cheap artillery are going to love these guys, rerolling 1s, and not getting -1 for indirect. So pretty awesome. The Armored Sentinels, again, lots of heavy weapons. And for these guys, they just get to reroll the wounds against monsters and vehicles. So I could see a squadron of 3 of these running around hunting monsters with las cannons being pretty tough, or vehicles. And at 8 toughness and a 2+ save, the enemy's going to have to actually commit serious firepower to get rid of them. So that's nice. Oh, and they do not get made worse by taking wounds, so they have to die. You can't just take them down to like 3 wounds and go, oh, now they don't hit as well. They will always shoot just as well. And then the last thing we're going to look at is the Hellhound. Now, the Hellhound is a classic guard vehicle. It's based on a Chimera, so 10 movement, 10 toughness, 2+ save, 11 leadership, 11 wound, 7+ leadership, and 3 OC. And Deadly Demise die 6. Flush them out is their ability. Basically, if they shoot something, everybody else who shoots afterwards, the unit that they're targeting no longer has cover. The cover's on fire, so that's awesome. They can have some different hull weapons, heavy bolter, heavy flamer, and melta gun. Sorry, multi-melta. But then the other thing they get are turret weapons, and there's three options. There's the classic Inferno Cannon. This is ignores cover and torrent, 18 inches, 2 die 6. Again, torrent, so automatic hits. 6 strength, minus 2 AP, and 1 damage. It's pretty much exactly what it was last edition. I don't think this has changed at all. Except for this thing, obviously, has been added. But it's just an all-around good weapon. At one point, this was 2 damage, I think in 8th edition, and they had to nerf it because that was too good. But otherwise, yeah, this thing here is going to melt standard infantry. It's going to really affect things like Marines and make them nervous. If you roll well and get like 8, 9, 12 hits, yeah, you can knock out some Marines. And that's before using like your heavy flamer or whatever you have on the front. Then you got a chem cannon, and it's anti-infantry 2+ with torrent. So again, auto hits. This one's only 12-inch range, die 6 + 1 attacks, and it's strength 2, but again, anti-infantry 2+, and minus 2 and 2 damage. So this is a marine killer. I just don't know if I'd trust it at die 6 + 1. Rolling 2 shots, it's not going to feel good, and then you're going to risk wasting a command reroll. So I don't think I'd go with that one personally. The last option is the Melta Cannon. So it's blast, shooting at 5 Terminators, you get +1, but it's also Melta 4. So if you can get within 9 inches, which with a 10-inch move should be feasible. By turn 2, definitely. And then you get 4 extra shots. But otherwise, it's a base of die 3 shots at 18, 4+ to hit, 9 strength, minus 4 AP, and damages D6. I think if you see an opportunity to use this on some tanks or monsters, it's a pretty nice turret option, especially if you pair it with a multi-melta. At 9 inches, you're going to have 4 multi-melta and die 3 + 4 melta cannon shots, which are otherwise the exact same thing. So having, what would that be? What did I say? 8 up to 11 melta shots. There's really not much in the game that survives that. So I definitely think it's worth considering as a heavy hitter. You would just probably consider that you're going to lose it right after, and it's going to be a high priority target. Anyways, I'm going to stop there. It's late. My mouth is getting dry from talking for so long. And we're moving on into the last video after this anyways. We'll be starting with the Rogel Dorn, a very cool new tank that we just got a few months ago. So anyways, if you have any thoughts or comments, leave them in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching and have a great day.